are four arithmetic expressions, and we are to use our calculator to evaluate them. If there's no answer, we write D&E for does not exist, and we are to round our answers to the nearest hundredth as needed. If you go to your calculator, you can get the square root of 32 by pressing second the button and then pressing the x squared key, and you can see it's color coded. So I hit the blue button first. Your calculator might be yellow or some other color. So now I simply type 32 and press enter, and I get a decimal approximation to the nearest hundredth. So here is the hundredths place, the second decimal place. Since the number in the thousands place is bigger or equal to 5, in fact it's a 6, means we should round this number up. So 5.66 is what I'm going to say is my answer to the first question. Now the next part is the fourth root of 42. Let's see if you understand what that means. That means we're looking for a number that if you were to put it down 4 times in the blanks and multiply those 4 numbers, that you get 42, and that is not going to be a clean number. So we're going to use our calculator to figure that out. So there's different ways of doing this, but I'm not going to assume you know exponent rules at this point. One thing is you have to type the index first. So my index is a 4. I would have to type the 4 first. Then I would have to press math and then select option 5. You can either hit 5 on the keypad, or if you're the kind of student that likes to down arrow over and press enter, that works too. So the reason I don't like the notation is it looks like I'm taking 4 and multiplying by the x root of something. So you just have to use your imagination to realize that this notation means that that x is taking on the value of 4, that this is indeed the fourth root. Now you can write 42. Now on some of the calculators, when you did that x root, it automatically put a left parentheses. So if that was the case, then you should cap it off there to let it know that that's the only thing you're taking the fourth root of. So pressing enter, we get this number. And remember, rounding to the hundredths. Since this digit is a 5, I'm going to round the 4 up to a 5. So 2.55. So the idea is that if you took 2.55 and multiplied it by 2.55 and did that, right, 4 times, that you would get approximately 42. Now, the reason why it would only be approximately 42, of course, would be that we rounded. In fact, let me show you. If I took the calculator and I took the previous answer and raised it to the 4th power, meaning multiplied by that itself 4 times, you would indeed get 42. So if you took the unrounded version and multiplied by that number by itself 4 times, you would get 42. But I'm sure that if you took the rounded version and multiplied by itself 4 times, you could only expect to get something close to 42. Let me clear the screen, and the next one is to take the cube root of negative 30, which means give me a number that multiplies by itself 3 times to give me a negative. And that's actually possible, so we're not going to have to use our D&E answer on this one. It's possible to multiply 3 negative numbers together and get a negative result. A negative times a negative times a negative is indeed a negative. I just have no idea what that decimal would come out to be. So if you were to go math, you might notice that for cube roots, you don't have to do what we did up here. You could actually just select option 4. I'm just going to press 4, and you get a cube root. And I'm going to type negative 30 and right parenthesis to cap that one off. And the calculator is telling me to 2 decimals would be negative 3.11. Remember that since this digit is 5 or higher, this digit gets rounded up. So negative 3.11. And again, if you took negative 3.11, you wouldn't quite get negative 30 if you multiplied by itself 3 times, because we are rounding. The last one, I can tell you I don't even need a calculator unless you want to get into what's called complex numbers, and maybe I shouldn't even mention that word in this video, but we need a number that if you multiplied by itself an even number of times, it doesn't matter if that number is positive or negative, because there's even amount of them, you are never going to get negative 36. It's just simply not going to work. Your calculator will give you an error, or it'll give you some complex answer, and I don't want to get into complex numbers in this video. The idea is that if your answer was positive, because positives times positives are positive, you'll never get a negative. If you were to stick a negative number here, so negative some number, and you copied that 6 times, again, the fact there's an even number of pairings, you can see a negative times a negative is a positive, and this negative times this negative would be a positive, and this negative times a negative would yield a positive. You could think of that being simplified down as multiplying 3 positives together, and whenever you multiply positive numbers, they stay positive. You can never get negative 36, so this is simply does not exist. On your calculator, you could still try it. You could type 6, you could press math, and you could select option 5, and again, use your imagination. This is not 6 multiplied by the xth root. This is the 6th root of negative 36, and when I press enter, the answer I get will depend on what mode my calculator is in. In fact, if you let me hit mode, I am in what is called real mode, and if all you want to consider is real answers, and I'm going to leave it at that, let me hit second quit to go back, because I'm telling my calculator that I do not want to deal with complex numbers to keep our answers real. When I press enter, the calculator will say error. The answer is non-real, so it's a non-real answer.